Hello everybody, this is Cam from Entertainment, and welcome back to another Entertainment Talk video. And this Entertainment Talk video is a special one, and that reason being, it's for Lost Month. Oh yeah. In this episode, we'll be discussing Lost and one of the weird aspects and elements of it, the daddy issues. Something that is actually pretty prevalent and important in the series. Anyway, it's also something that I just thought I should give my thoughts on. So, let's just get into it. But before we do get into it, just know that this video will contain some spoilers from the TV series Lost. So if you have not seen it, or you do care about these spoilers, please step away. You have been warned. Many of the survivors in Lost have daddy issues. It's something you'll pick up on real quick while watching the series if you're paying attention. So today, in this Entertainment Talk video, we're going to discuss just that. You may be asking, daddy issues? Really? Was it that key in the series? Well, there's literally an episode in season 1 called All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, so it's at least somewhat present in the show. Or at least in that episode. Issues with fathers was definitely a large theme in Lost that was pretty much there since the first episode of the pilot. The father-child relationship definitely seems to be a theme that interested J.J. Abrams, the creator of Lost, as he also explored it in another series that he created, Alias. Anyway, we're going to discuss a few of the survivors in Lost, as well as a couple other characters that were not survivors, and how their relationships with their fathers drove the plot in the show. Let's do it! First, we're going to discuss John Locke. Now, John Locke was an interesting character in Lost because, honestly, the entire plot of how he even gets to the island all dates back to his father. As many people know, John Locke had a relationship that starts way back with his father, where his father uses him and steals his kidney after years of never knowing him. So Locke probably already had, that issue inside of him where he didn't know his father. That alone was a daddy issue. To have his dad steal his kidneys is just... yeah. Then from there, over the years, he doesn't talk to him. He was already obsessed with the fact that he didn't know his father, but now his father's abandoned him and he becomes obsessed with that, and it affects his own relationship with his love interest, Helen. Eventually, Locke ends up helping out his father, and Helen abandons him. I'm not going to get into all that. But then later down the line, I'm not going to get into the entire plot of the episode, but basically, that episode ended with Locke's father pushing him out of a fucking window. Like, shit, it doesn't get more complicated than that, now does it? As you see, I started with, the best character, the one with the worst relationship, the outright worst. I mean, his father tried to kill him. But anyway, from there, Locke just becomes a bitter, just sad person. He's one of the people where, when you look at him and how he was in his flashbacks before he gets to the island, you are honestly surprised that he didn't end up killing himself. And I don't mean that oh, he should have, fucking killed himself because he was so depressed. I just mean, just seeing how broken he was before getting to the island, it's just knowing that it was because of his father, where that was the number one thing he cared about, was having that relationship with his father, and that's how he gets to the island. Yeah. For those who don't know, this puts him in a wheelchair. He becomes paralyzed. John Locke becomes paralyzed over this, and then that's how he ends up on the island, because he tries to refine himself with this walkabout tour, and honestly, the island was his destiny, and it's funny because, getting to the island is... when he's there, he's one of the only characters where, that's where he wants to be. He doesn't want to leave. And what's interesting about that is basically the fact that his whole daddy issue, his whole thing with his father, is ultimately what brings him to find his happy place in the end. So that was just kind of an interesting one. That's John Locke and his whole thing. And that's the one thing I say that drives the plot with that, is the fact that that daddy issue is literally what gets him to the island. So, and with many of the characters, that is the case, including our next character, Jack Shepherd. Jack had a lot of daddy issues over the years with his father, who also worked as a surgeon alongside him in a hospital, and that created a lot of, minor problems over the years. It's obvious that there might have been not really a physical abuse, but mental abuse from his father in previous years, and his father is shown as an alcoholic, so, who knows? Physical abuse is something I never really thought of from Christian Shepherd, but mental abuse, maybe. Jack ends up in the same profession, and it seems like a lot of times his father's very condescending towards him. There's definitely a dynamic there where he doesn't fully feel the love from his father, rather than he feels like the relationship is more of them working together. And that's kind of how I always saw it. Even outside of their workplace, it just didn't seem like it was much of a, like a tight relationship between father and son. That's just always how I viewed it. Jack busts his dad for drinking on the job, which basically separates the two in around, less than a year time frame before Jack gets to the island. Him and his father aren't talking until he goes missing, and he goes to go find him and finds out that he died, that he basically drank himself to death. And that's how Jack gets to the island. Look, that's a very interesting thing, 'cause that's how he gets to the island, because he's going to go pick up his father, and, he goes to Australia to get his father's body, and they crash on the way back. So that's basically like how he gets to the island, and it's all because of his father. So you're seeing that number 2, you're seeing this trend now, number 2 of the survivors who are on the island because of their father. And you're going to notice this is the trend with a lot of different people. Now Claire and her father, as we know, Claire's father is Christian Shepherd. Now this one isn't exactly the same, but she never knows her father. Then when she does get to know him, she finds out that he has this whole other life, raising another family, which includes, Jack, his family with Jack. So she wants nothing to do with him, and it creates an interesting dynamic where she never knows her father. And this is going to be one that's pretty brief because there's not really too much to say, but she never knows her father, and that's really the big thing. And then eventually she finds out, who he is, how he died. And what's funny is that she thinks that when she finds her father on the island later, when his form is being taken over by the man in black, she honestly thinks that it's her father. And that's what makes her stay on the island. It's what makes her disappear and abandon her son, which kind of turns into the crazy nut job leading into season 6 when they find her again. So that was kind of like driving the plot of the show. And it's just really interesting when you do think about it, like how many instances where the dynamic of the relationship between the father and the child is what affects certain plot elements. And you really just don't notice it as much, but it's interesting. And I honestly, I really do like that theme. But we're going to get into one in a second that's pretty minor that didn't really affect the plot at all, but that's Charlie and his father. This is one that they don't explore much, as you don't really see much with his father. The one scene you do see with his father is when Charlie and his dad are at the pool having fun, but there is definitely a few references and little details that do show that him and his dad didn't have the best relationship, and where it seems like he's very close with his mother, but him and his dad were just always distanced. His dad didn't agree with his music, with his choice to be, a musician and the path that he took in life. You don't see much with his dad, but that was always just one that was pretty minor. Next one we're going to talk about is Hurley and his father. Now, this one is one that was somewhat big. It wasn't as minor as Charlie, not as big as Jack or Locke and their fathers, but basically Hurley and his dad walks out on him years ago, which is another big theme with the daddy issues, is being basically abandoned. But his dad walks out on him years ago, and then when he does come back after Hurley wins the lottery, he tries to, kind of win over his affection, come back into his life. He's trying to change for Hurley, and it's something that Hurley just does not like, just having him back, feeling used with the money. So because he's facing all these issues with feeling like the money's cursed, he decides to go to Australia to go meet with a man named Sam Toomey to kind of figure out what's going on with this whole thing. But it's funny because it's actually his dad returning that drives him that way, because he realizes he needs to figure this out. He needs to get away, get some time away from his family because of what's happened with his dad and the return. So it really is his dad and that whole thing that drives him to the island. But what's funny with this one is how his dad basically says, don't go, stay. It's obvious that his dad wants to make an effort and have a relationship with him, but this is one of the rare instances in the show where it's really that the child just is pushing them away because of the past and how his dad walked out years ago. Before I continue, what do you guys think of this Dharma Initiative shirt? I quite like it. I ordered it pretty recently on, I think, was it on Redbubble? I don't know where I ordered it, but I like it. If you guys like it, go check it out. I'm not even sponsoring anything. It's a cool shirt. Next one we're getting into is Walt and his father. Now this is another one that goes back to the whole abandonment thing, but it wasn't even on him. Walt's father Michael is left by his mother, Walt's mother Susan. She takes Walt with her as she, goes away. She moves off, does her own life, and just leaves Michael, basically just leaves him with nothing. And Michael wanted to be a part of this child's life, but just couldn't because he had to let the mother go off and do her own thing. And as being the mother, the courts are going to side with the mother. So she goes off to do her own thing, leaving Michael. But Walt has this feeling that his dad abandoned him, and he doesn't really argue with that too much. I mean, he does a little bit, but not into too much depth. And it's not until the end of the first season when Walt realizes this is actually a good dad, and it's not his fault. Everything that happened, the cards that he was given, he was dealt a pretty shitty hand. Michael was dealt a very shitty hand, and throughout the whole entire series. But I think Walt begins to realize it wasn't his fault at all. And the interesting thing is, once their relationship, it's obvious that it's a good relationship, Walt is taken by the others, creating this whole thing where Michael will do anything for his son, and it's very You know, even though he does some pretty sickening and disturbing things, it's very heartwarming in a small sense to know like what he wants to do, what he'll do for his son, and like how much he cares for his son. Then of course once Walt figures out what happened, he completely leaves him, leaving Michael behind, basically leaving Michael by himself again, where Michael feels broken again, like he's all alone. He almost kills himself. Then he goes off to try to redeem himself, and eventually ends up dying. And the final idea that Walt has in his mind about his father is that he's gone. He went away onto the island, and it's a sad thing, really, because like I said, Michael was dealt a pretty shitty hand, and I feel like Michael tried to be the best father he could, even though he did some pretty bad things. Even though their dynamic was sort of like iffy, I feel like overall he tried to be a good father to his son, and it's just one of those things where I don't even know how to explain it. It's like a lot of times Walt just did not understand what he was doing for him, but also you can't justify what Michael was doing for his son. So that was always just one of those things where it sucks. Michael is honestly a character I've always felt bad for on the show. A lot of people really hate him, but I've always just felt pretty bad for him. And just because he, like I said, I'm just going to say it once again, he's dealt a pretty shitty hand in life when you think about it, His girlfriend runs off with their son, leaving him alone. When Michael finally reunites with his son is taken. Then once, they're back together again, Walt ends up abandoning him because he's disturbed by what his father did. So it's sad, but honestly, their relationship is probably one of my favorite relationships in the show, and because it's just an interesting dynamic, and it's one of those like father-son like issues where Michael really tried his hardest, and it just didn't turn out the way he would have hoped. Now, there's some other characters in the show that had pretty bad dynamics, but I'm going to talk about one last big character. The last one we're going to discuss here is Ben and his father. Now, as you know, Ben is not one of the survivors, but Ben and his father, this is an interesting one. So basically, Roger, Ben's father, really resents Ben for most of his life, becomes an alcoholic, all because of the mother's death. After giving birth to Ben, so he kind of resents Ben. It feels like why am I stuck with you? Like, I lost your mother and I'm stuck with you. Especially when they go to the island, he just feels like he hit rock bottom, stuck with his son, and he is just a shitty father. Honestly, I'd say he's the worst out of all of them. He's the father where he was there, but he's just a piece of shit. Like, in my opinion, he forgets his son's birthday every year, but doesn't really seem to care. Like he just like, oh, maybe next year I'll remember. And he's just not a good dad. Always resented him. Ben always felt like this little emptiness over it, and he becomes very angry towards his father. And when Ben finally has his uprising that basically takes over the Dharma Initiative, he kills his father, and he has no remorse, not a single bit of remorse, because his dad treated him like shit, and he is just kind of over it at this point. And he's like, you know what? Even if you do remember my birthday next year, I don't care. And he doesn't even think so. He's like, I don't think you will, because they're sitting up on that mountainside, drinking beer for his birthday. There's a line. He's like, I don't know why, I keep thinking that one of these years you'll actually remember. And it's pretty obvious that Ben is just over it, and it's this last day where he knows that this is the last day because he's going to murder everyone in the Dharma Initiative, including his father. And like I said, there's not a single bit of remorse, and it's sad, really. It is a sad relationship in the show, but it's one where I honestly can't feel bad for his dad one bit, because he's just horrible. And it seems like was a good, decent person. It's just what happens with his mother breaks him, and I can't really forgive him for the way he treats Ben, and can't say I blame him. I'm not saying you should go out and kill your father, but I can't say I blame him for how just bitter he is towards his dad, and how heartbroken he is over the fact that especially as a young child, over the fact that his dad doesn't give a shit about him. And this one's obvious where there's some physical abuse, the fact of how quiet he is as a kid, and just growing up and becoming just the kind of a sick bastard that Ben is for a little while, that we see him as. It's obvious there was some physical abuse. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed my rambling of just random daddy issues. This is kind of a thing. The entertainment talk videos, I'm not really sure what I want to do with them. I like doing these where I just kind of sit here and just talk about random things in shows, movies, video games, just random entertainment. But I do enjoy doing them, so if you have any advice on how I should structure these, or things I should talk about, or you do just enjoy my rambling and my opinions of how I see things, let me know down below. But anyway, what do you guys think? What are your ideas relating to kind of this dynamic in the show of Lost? I'd love to know what you guys think, but thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and please like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it really helps me out. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Have a great day.